I hope everyone is staying warm on this chilly evening. All right, we're going to get right into tonight's lesson, and we are picking up on page 47 in our parenting manuals. Page 47, and in our previous class, our last teacher was going over a few rules about developing rules. Okay, so we just went over those 5 points there. And then at the bottom, we have a little assignment that you can do with these parents that you are teaching. Okay, so it says, use the lines below to list areas in which you would like your child or children to develop self-control. Okay, and it only gives 4 lines here, but they'll probably need a lot more lines to write on. Okay, and then turning over on page 48, it says, what rules can you implement to help your child or children reach the desired behavior? Write a positive rule that corresponds to each entry above. And remembering that we always want to reinforce the positive behavior that we want to see in our children. Not focusing on the negative, but the positive. And then the last one under that is, what are your reasons for implementing these rules? Write the rationale for each rule. Okay? So that's a nice interactive activity you can do. And let's go back over to the lesson plan. LP 6B, and now we are going to be on procedure 8. It says, tell students that they can also teach self-control by the way they communicate with others and with their children. Discuss the section, Effective Communication, on pages 48 through 49. Stress the need to communicate respectfully and to teach children to do the same. All right, so back on page 48, we are going to go on to the section entitled Effective Communication, and you can write LP 6B Procedure 8 right down there, just so you know that that's where this procedure starts. Okay, and can I have my first slide? I'm going to have some references up on the screen. These are some references of where it talks about effective communication in the intermediate series, if you want to write these down. Okay, so it says communication skills are essential to positive parenting. Essential meaning very important. A moral person will take the time to respectfully listen to what the child has to say. And if you quickly go over to page 27, and where you see those 5 little bullet points there. The last one I underlined, it says, be willing to listen. A great teacher is also a great listener. Okay, so we have to learn how to be a great listener. When it is your turn to speak, be specific in what you want to communicate. Okay, so there shouldn't be any question in that child's mind of what you're trying to tell them. You want to make sure you get straight to the point and explain yourself clearly. Use the following list to help improve your communication with your child. Okay, so here are some do's. The first one is state the problem in a calm but firm voice. And I don't know about you, but I've heard some parents say before, well, my child only listens when I yell at them. Well, that's because you haven't taught your child how to listen to you. Okay, so it is possible to talk to a child, to correct a child in a calm but firm voice. Number 2, use correct language as opposed to baby talk and speak slowly. Number 3, kneel or stoop or bend down to your child's level. And the 4th one is implement the spoon technique. And we're going to get into that on the following page, on page 49. Okay, so now do not. Do not name call, accuse, argue with, or put down your child. And you can reference the respect unit on page 56. And I'm going to read a little section here. The title of the page is The Language of Respect. And it says, Respectful communication also involves controlling your emotions so that you can refrain from name-calling or teasing others. Name-calling chips away at another's self-respect. It can make them feel devalued, embarrassed, and humiliated. People often name-call when they're upset with someone. Saying hurtful, spiteful words to show someone that you're upset with them never solves the problem. In fact, it only makes the situation worse. And that was in the Respect Unit, Chapter 56. Okay, the third one is do not curse at or around your child. You would not want him to repeat the curse words. And children pick up just like that. You may say something, not even realize you said it, and then the next thing you know, you turn around and you hear your child saying the same exact thing. So that's how quickly it occurs. That's how mindful we have to be as teachers and parents. And the last one is do not yell at your child, otherwise he might begin yelling at you and or his teachers. Okay, so all of these three things that we just mentioned here, those would fall under verbal abuse. You can make a note in your books. And in the Respect Unit on page 57, we are given some tips. It says this is how you can speak the language of respect. Okay, so tell the person what you would like them to do or not to do. Be very clear about what you need. The other person cannot be respectful of your needs if they do not know what they are. Another one is take the time to listen to their side of the story, be respectful, and listen to what they have to say. Use the proper tone of voice. This means no screaming or yelling. Refrain from cursing. Foul language is not useful. It is only foul. And avoid put-downs. These only make the other person upset and make the situation worse. And then in that little box, back on page 48, it says, speak to your child in a calm tone of voice, no matter how old or young she is. The peaceful solution. Okay, so moving on to page 49. This is the spoon technique. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you have ever tried the spoon technique before? Okay, I see a few hands. All right, so right up top here, it gives us the rules for how the spoon technique works. It says, the spoon or any other chosen object technique is a great way for the entire family to learn how to take turns speaking. Everyone must agree to abide by the speaking, listening rules. The spoon is passed around, allowing each person the opportunity to speak fully, feeling satisfied he or she has expressed his or her point of view for the moment. The one holding the spoon is permitted to speak without interruption. The rest of the family agrees to listen with an open mind and value what is being said. Okay, so you can encourage your parents to make this a really enjoyable and fun activity for the children. And once they get into the habit of taking the spoon and each having a turn to speak and having a turn to listen, then it will be much easier for them to do it without having a spoon or an object in their hand. So this method can peacefully resolve conflict and help to build positive character traits such as, and then it lists 3 positive character traits here. So the first one is patience. You can only speak when you are holding the spoon. Others must patiently wait their turn to speak. So this gives the child an opportunity to, feel what it's like being the speaker, and then they also get to see what it's like to be the listener as well. So they get to put themselves in the other person's shoes. Okay, also teaches respect. You must show respect to the person who is speaking, and the person who is speaking must speak in a respectful tone of voice. No foul language should be used. So even though the child, or it could be an adult, might be very upset about something, they still need to understand and learn how to express themselves in a respectful manner. And then the last one is self-control. All involved must practice self-control. The person who is speaking must do so respectfully, and those who are listening cannot interrupt or distract the speaker. Okay, and remember, in order for communication to be effective, there has to be a speaker and a listener. Using this method prevents conversations from becoming screaming matches. Okay, so if everyone is talking at one time, the person who is trying to say something is going to get even more frustrated because they're not being heard, and it's just going to turn into a very chaotic situation. Participants are more aware of what they are saying and the tone of voice they are using. All family members, including small children, should get an opportunity to speak. Everyone should value what the others have to say and listen attentively. Okay, so not just listen, but actually listening attentively, listening fully. And we're going to go into what that actually means here. In the respect unit, you can write this reference down on page 55. It talks about communicating respectfully. And it says communication also involves listening. When you are a great listener, you give others an opportunity to express their wants, needs, and feelings without being interrupted. The roles of a speaker and listener are automatically designated during normal conversations. If both people speak at the same time, neither would hear what the other is saying. And if both people listen at the same time, there would be nothing to listen to. Therefore, in order to communicate, one person must listen while the other one speaks. Of course, the roles would switch from time to time. However, if one person constantly interrupted or did all the talking and never let the other person speak, the conversation would not be respectful. Listening politely to someone and waiting your turn to speak shows care and concern. When people know that someone respects them and cares enough to listen, it makes them feel supported and appreciated. Okay, and some of you might have seen this before where maybe a child is trying to get their parents' attention and the parent is just looking at their phone. And they're like, "Do you hear me? Do you hear what I'm saying?" And the parent's like, "Yes, I'm listening," but they're just staring at their phone. And then they wonder why, whenever they call their child's name, why their child doesn't come to them, why their child doesn't stop what they're doing. But really, they're just following the example that they saw the parents doing. So we have to be very mindful of that. Okay, so continuing on here, on page 49, it says, communicating effectively takes patience. Remember, children also need to verbalize their needs, concerns, fears, and hopes. Encourage them to talk out rather than act out when they are frustrated, annoyed, or impatient. And if you remember in the intermediate series, we've learned about talk it out rather than fight it out. We want to learn how to use our words rather than being physical. Teach them to use words that will effectively describe their feelings. If we constantly practice positive role modeling, maintain appropriate rules, use effective communication, as well as protect the environment, then our children will have a great opportunity to develop self-control. And at the bottom there it says, take the time to listen, you won't regret it. Okay, so our children need to know that we as parents will be there for them to listen to them and that they can come to us with any problem. Because if you don't build that strong foundation of trust early on, then it can be something that's very difficult to build as the child grows older, and it will affect them, throughout their life. Okay, let's turn back to LP 6B. And we are going to look at the last procedure here. Procedure 9, it says, conclude by telling class that by training their children to adhere to the rules of proper conduct, they are setting a standard by which their children can measure their own behavior. Okay, so this concludes our lesson 6 here. And now we're going to go ahead and turn over to LP 7A, lesson 7. And the title of this lesson is Teaching Anger management. Okay, so this is another really big topic, just like we just got through with talking about self-control. And actually, all of this just keeps tying in with self-control more and more. And the purpose and objective is students will learn techniques to help manage their anger. Okay, and make sure the parents understand that we're all going to experience being angry at some point in time in our lives. It's a normal feeling, but we don't have to act out on that anger. So we're going to learn some different things that we can do to help us manage our own anger, and things that we can teach to our children and our students. So the materials needed are the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Parenting Manual, and then pencils and pens, and the activity cutouts, which are on page 7C. Okay, so we're going to start off by briefly reviewing lesson 6, which was effective parents teach self-control to their children by asking the following questions. Okay, so the first question is, I'm going to ask these questions to you all. How early should we start teaching self-control to our children? You can shout out the answer. Yes, from the womb. And you can reference page 43. Pretty much the whole page refers back to that point. Okay, B. What are some steps to developing self-control? Anyone? What are some steps to developing self-control? Remember okay, there's a hand over there. I'll give you a hint. We talked about it on page 44. So if you want to go back and look, you can.
The first most important thing is to remain calm and talk with a calm tone of voice.
Excellent. Yes, very important. Remaining calm and approach the situation in a calm manner and speak in a calm tone of voice. Okay, and that is the very first step here. That's on page 44. Anyone else? Okay, I'll read over them here. Number 2 is guard the environment of your child. Number 3, don't use the television as a babysitter or companion. The 4th one is do not allow your child to play violent video games or listen to violent sexually oriented music. And the last one here is consider how many traditional nursery rhymes we sing and recite to our children as we bounce them on our knee, bathe, and feed them. Why not recite poems and songs that will help your child become familiar with positive character traits such as self-control, respect, and honesty? So that's on page 44. Okay, number 3. Why are rules important? Why are rules important? Yes.
Rules are important because they set a standard for what you set, so then you can always go back to that standard if something is out of control.
That's right. They set a certain standard for how certain things are supposed to be, and they help keep everything in order and running smoothly. Anyone else? Okay, over here.
Rules help to remove chaos and confusion.
Yes, they help to remove chaos and confusion. Okay, and on page 45 here, you can reference the last paragraph. It says, as your child matures, constantly evaluate his or her behavior and determine which rules and guidelines will help to develop proper conduct and social skills. The process of evaluating your child's behavior takes into consideration developing rules and consistently implementing them. This is an important part of your child acquiring self-control. So that was on page 45, the last paragraph. Okay, the 4th question, what is key to training a child? So word that starts with the C, anyone want to shout it out? Yes, consistency. And on page 46, the 3rd bullet point at the top, it says the 3rd step is patience and consistency. Okay, so consistency, and you also have patience. Those are the key steps right there. Okay, and the last question here. What are some things to keep in mind when developing rules? What are some things to keep in mind when developing rules? Up here.
Keeping rules age appropriate.
Yes, making rules age appropriate. Okay, there's another hand.
You also have to keep in mind the goal you want to achieve, because without that goal, you set in that rule, but you're not looking for the end results of why you set in that goal.
Yeah, so make sure you understand, why you have this, think about why you're setting this rule. What is the goal that you're trying to achieve with that? That's an excellent one. Okay, anyone else? All right, if you turn over to page 47, we went over these in the last class, a few rules about developing rules. Okay, so to quickly go over them, the first one is make sure that the rules are thoroughly considered and evaluated before they are implemented in order to avoid confusing the child. When rules are not clear, not only are the children confused, they are more apt to resist them. The next one is keep the rules positive and focused on the desired behavior you want from your child. The next one is keep rules simple, which makes it easier for the children to remember. The next one is be careful not to present too many rules at once. Work on 1 or 2 key behaviors at a time, and then gradually add more rules as circumstances demand. And the last one is do not expect your child to remember or embrace these rules immediately. Constant reminders and consistency on the part of the parents are absolutely necessary. So there's that consistency and that patience to keep reiterating those rules and be patient with your child, because it will take time, but eventually they will catch on to it. All right, excellent with the review. Now we are going to move on to procedure 2. It says inform students that in today's class, they will learn how to help children manage anger. And as a reference, we first learned about anger management in the self-control unit, chapter 3. Tell students that heredity, entertainment, and environment affect our ability to appropriately manage anger. Explain that even children can exhibit uncontrolled anger, resulting in disastrous consequences. We can begin teaching our anger management to even young children so they can learn to make responsible rather than impulsive choices. Discuss the main points on page 51. And remember that no child is too young or too old to learn how to control their anger. All right, turning over to page 51, you can write LP7A Procedure 2 at the top of your paper. And this is Lesson 7, Teaching Anger Management. It says another important aspect of developing self-control in your child is in helping him learn how to manage anger. And you can underline this next sentence here because this is the definition of anger management. Anger management is the way in which we control anger so it does not turn to rage and become harmful or destructive to self, others, possessions, or the environment. And you can reference the self-control unit, pages 57 through 58, and also page 72, which talks about the definition of anger, which is a normal secondary emotion that tells you something is being said or done that you do not agree with. And then the definition for rage can be found in the self-control unit on page 59, and it means when anger turns violent. Okay? The way in which children are inclined to handle the emotion of anger is based on heredity, environment, and influence. If handling anger in violent or destructive ways is one of your family's legacies, if your children have been exposed to violent TV shows, movies, video games, or reading material, or if you have a tendency, a tendency in your child to become aggressive when angry, then the need to teach anger management is critical. And you can reference back on page 4 of the parenting manual, specifically in paragraph 3, it talks about how these behaviors are coming from the subconscious mind. Okay, but even though they are coming from the subconscious mind and they are learned behaviors, it doesn't mean that you can't change those behaviors. You can. It says, anytime you watch or allow your children to watch a violent movie, TV show, or play a violent video game, you and they are becoming desensitized to aggression and violence. Okay, so not just the child, but the parents as well. It says you and the child. You're both becoming desensitized to it. And, okay, so next paragraph here. Even in a child's life, anger that is uncontrolled can result in stress, oppositional and destructive behaviors, and alienation. And for a reference, in the self-control unit, pages 66 through 67, it talks about the 3 different anger styles, which are the withdrawal, displacement, and attack. Just as with adults, children who lack appropriate skills for coping with anger ultimately make poor choices that can result in hurting others or themselves. Having never learned the coping skills to handle frustrations, or having run out of coping skills, a young person's anger can manifest itself by throwing a tantrum, back-talking, using profanity, throwing things, hitting, and kicking. So it starts young with a tantrum, but if the behavior isn't stopped there, then as that child becomes older, it can get a lot worse and can ultimately end in someone losing a life. These behaviors can then trigger an angry response from the parent. If the parent also lacks self-control and effective coping skills, the result could be emotional, verbal, or physical abuse to child. And on pages 13 through 14, if you want to write that down, that's where it goes into detail about these different forms of abuse: the emotional, the verbal, and the physical abuse. It says, what do you think is the main reason why a young person gets angry? If you are thinking frustrations brought about not getting his or her own way, you would be right on target. Consider the 2-year-old who is told he cannot go outside, the 10-year-old who feels like he has been treated unfairly, and the 16-year-old who feels he is not getting enough independence. It is our job as parents to assist our children in developing self-control to deal with anger appropriately. So this is all part of the learning process. It is a proven fact that people tend to be more at peace with themselves and others when they can control their anger in healthy ways, regardless of the degree of intimidation or amount of provocation they are faced with. The earlier we teach the proper anger management skills to our children, the less likely they are to develop the poor coping skills and aggressive tendencies that have become so prevalent in our society today. Okay, so just because, this is how society has learned to deal with problems and they don't know how to control their anger, it doesn't mean that we have to bring our children up in this way. So really stress that to these parents. They can bring their children up in a better way, teaching them these different things. But, like we keep saying over and over and over again, it's going to take a lot of hard work on their part, but it is possible. Okay, so with this, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the next teacher.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah did a great job, didn't she? Okay, so I'm going to pick up on procedure 3. So if we could go back to LP 7. We're going to read procedure 3. And it says, ask for volunteers to read the article, Does Kindergarten Need Cops? Right then and there, something should spark your mind. Does kindergarten, now how old is a kindergarten child? About 5, okay. So does kindergarten need cops? On page 52, ask students what they would do if they were in the same situation and allow as many volunteers as time permits. have other volunteers read the next two paragraphs on page 52 and the last part of the article. Re-emphasize the importance of carefully screening, underline that, emphasize the importance of carefully screening what our children see on TV for violence and sexual content, because violence and aggression are primarily learned behaviors. Okay, so we're going to jump over to page 52 now. Page 52, and we're going to read this article. Okay? So it says, does kindergarten need cops? It says the youngest school kids are acting out in really outrageous ways. Why? And this is by Claudia Wallace. And it says temper tantrums are nothing new in kindergarten. I mean, we've seen that. And first grade, but the behavior of a 6-year-old girl this fall at a school in Fort Worth, Texas, this is close by here, had even the most experienced staff members wanting to run for cover. Okay, now you just got to figure this here. Asked to put away a toy, the youngster began to scream. Okay, that's normal. You might see that now and again, right? Told to calm down, she knocked over the desk and crawled under her teacher's desk, kicking it and dumping out the content of the drawers. Okay. Then things really began to deteriorate. I was like, it could get worse. Still shrieking, the child stood up and began hurling books at her terrified classmates. How old is she? She's 6. Who had been ushered from the room to safety. I'm clearly seeing an increasing number of kindergartners and first graders coming to our attention for aggressive behavior, says Michael Parker, Program Director of the Psychological Services at the Fort Worth Independent School District, which serves 80,000 students. The incidents have occurred not only in low-income urban schools, but in middle-class areas as well, Parker says. Parker says, we're talking about serious talking back to teachers, profanity. What age are we talking about? Profanity, biting, kicking, and hitting adults. Now I want you to put off in your margin authority, okay? Hitting adults or authority. And we're seeing it in 5-year-olds. And these are not the kids who have been formally labeled as emotionally disturbed. Now, these are not the ones that have been labeled emotionally disturbed, says Clark, who works in Parker's department. We have our ED books, and then we have our BAD kids, okay? Wow. So when I wanted to go back to, I wanted to show my first slide, okay? The first slide on the screen. And this is remember, this is page 66 and 67 of the self-control unit, the intermediate series, and it says, behavior uncontrolled anger can lead to rage and even violent behavior. 6 years old here. The typical angry person might have one of the 3 responses: withdrawal, displacement, attack. Which one did this child have? Which one? A few of them. So we know that there was displacement because remember she tipped over the desk, and what else occurred? She attacked, right? She was throwing books at the students that had to be ushered to safety. A 6-year-old child. So we've got withdrawal, displacement, attack. And it says here, and this is page 67 of the self-control unit, whether you attack, withdraw, or displace your anger determines what is known as your anger style. And determining how you typically respond when you choose to be angry is an important aspect of learning how to control your anger. It's very important that you learn how you do it so that you can learn how to overcome it, right? Okay. Now I want to show you my next slide. Okay. I'm going to put that on the screen. Okay, so Has anyone seen this on the news lately? This is a bunch of grown-up 6-year-olds who did not accept an answer because remember, we learned in the elementary series that we have to learn to accept answers, right? So this is a bunch of grown-up 6-year-olds who never learned that lesson. And what did they do? What did we see take place at the Capitol building this week? Very recent in the news, this just took place, right? They were pushing their way into the Capitol building. They were throwing things, were they not? They even took things from the Capitol building, all because they didn't accept the outcome of the election, right? Now, I'm not being political here because, I'm not going to tell you who I voted for or who I didn't. That doesn't matter. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And it's the morals that I want you to see here, because this 6-year-old girl, this is what she's going to grow up and do if not caught and changed now. Do you see how important it is for us to teach the parents the importance of changing the heart and mind of their children? It's critical when you see there were tens of thousands of people at that Capitol. At least 4 people died. So it's not a small thing when you see a tantrum, an out-of-control child, and that it's been put in the hands of us, the teachers, to be able to guide these parents to change these kind of outcomes where we would never have to have them again. Do you see your role as teachers and the importance? Okay, we're going to continue reading here. Oh, I forgot to tell you, please put LP7 Procedure 3 right there where we started to read that article, okay? Now I'm going to continue reading here. It says, one of the first and most effective ways to assist young children in learning to control anger is through role modeling of proper anger management skills. In the article above, teachers were surprised that children as young as 5 years old were capable of violent, aggressive behavior, as if 5 years is not enough time to learn how to behave inappropriately. Now, I love this paragraph next. You really have to stress this to our parents when we teach them. Let's consider all the things children can do in the first 5 years of their life. They learn to walk, talk, jump, run, hold utensils, eat on their own, use the restroom without any more assistance, bathe, dress themselves. Think about it. Some even learn how to read, write, and do arithmetic, recite their address and their phone numbers. And these are just some of the things that they learn how to do by the time that they're 5. But we think if we are sitting them in front of a television or violent video games, that somehow that's not going to be absorbed. And then we send them off, and other people, classrooms, other children, have to deal with the aftermath. Children are capable of a lot more than we give them credit for. This is what we have to stress to our parents. Now, if they're exposed to negative influences, the negative influences are going to be absorbed and they will come out in the behavior. Children that young don't have the capability of filtering these things out on their own. That's why they need the role model of their parent, and that's why it's so important when we're teaching these parents that we stress the importance of them keeping control at all times in front of their children and not losing it. We're going to get into that here in this lesson. Now we're going to continue here. It says, as previously mentioned, violent, aggressive acts are learned behaviors. And you can reference page 51 and page 26 there. Learned behaviors. So we're going to continue with the article here. Also want to remind everybody that it's not just what you sit in front of your child. Remember page 4. You can put page 4 in your margin there for your classes, because that's where we learned about the subconscious mind and what is formed and put into their minds even when they're in the womb, right? So what the mother, a lot of the classes, the parenting classes that we have in the Peaceful Solution are maternity classes where they come pregnant, right? So those would be something that you'd want to point out. It's very important to teach the parents to be governing what they allow in their child's presence and the child still being in the womb, okay? Very important. So we're going to continue here. It says, Hinshaw and other experts on child behavior also point out that aggressive behavior in children has been irrefutably linked to exposure to violence on TV and in movies, video games, and other media. Dozens of studies have shown this link. Probably hundreds, says psychologist Jerome Singer, co-director of the Yale University Family Television Research and Consultation Center. The size of the effect is almost as strong as the relationship between smoking and cancer. Smoking and cancer. There's little doubt that very young children are watching loads of TV before they even reach kindergarten. And you know why? And, we're doing the parenting classes. Don't forget, we're talking a lot about the children here, but who are our students? The parents. So we've got to remember that they're the ones that are going to say, oh, I just need a little time to myself. I'm going to stick them in front of the television set for a few hours. And I have actually known parents that will stick a child in front of television for hours and hours and hours so that they can cook, get their housework done, or whatever. It's like a babysitter to the child. But you have no idea what's going into the children's mind. And some parents say, and you have to be ready for this, well, I only let them watch cartoons. And I just remember when I was young, cartoon, the Flintstones, and they used to beat each other on the head, and the Roadrunner, and the poor coyote would die every episode. I don't know, somehow he came back to life again, but all these violent acts, and they stick their children in front of the television set for hours and hours and hours, and all that is going into their mind. It says there's little doubt that very young children are watching loads of TV before even they reach kindergarten. In October, the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation released the results of a survey of 1,065 parents with children ages 6 months to 6 years. The stunning findings is that 43%, highlight that, 43% of kids aged 2 and younger watch TV a typical day and watched TV on a typical day, and that 26% had a TV in their room, their bedroom. What age did I just say? 2 and, did I say older? 2 and younger. 2 years old and younger. The median amount of time spent watching 2 hours a day. 2 hours a day in that age group. And that's 2 hours a day that are not spent doing what toddlers most need to do, which is interacting with people who love them and can teach them the right way to behave, right? Underline and highlight that. That is something that you really want to get across to the parents. The job of a parent is it's so important. It's one of the most important jobs of any job. People get paid high-paying jobs to be executives and all kinds of things. Parents, they should be compensated. If the importance of their job could be put into money, they would be millionaires, every parent. You think about that. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our lesson plan, and we're going to read Procedure 4. Procedure 4, and it says, have volunteers read another article. Have volunteers read the news article entitled, Be True to Your School, and the paragraph that follows on page 53. stress that although these incidents are now commonplace, highlight that in your books, commonplace in classrooms and homes throughout the world, we should never, never, never accept them as normal. It's not normal. It might be common, but common doesn't have to be normal. We have an obligation to expect more from our children so that they can grow into morally responsible, productive members of society. So let's jump over to page 53, and we're going to read that another article here. It says, be true to your school. So you thought that first article was bad? Well, we got more for you. In a New York public school, okay, we're putting LP 7B procedure 4 on the top there, right there by the article. And it says, in a New York public school, several students who were upset with their 6th grade teacher attacked her. Now, I want everyone to think about it. Have you ever been upset with one of your teachers? Maybe you got a failing grade. Would you ever think of attacking your teacher? Okay, let's read on. It seemed that the teacher would not allow the class to see a Jerry Springer show on TV. Well, how many of you have ever heard of the Jerry Springer show? Okay, so this is a show where they throw chairs at each other, profanity, everything is beep, 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 and they holler and cuss and carry on. This is what this show is. So they were upset at their teacher. You have to wrap your brains around this here now. They were upset at their teacher because she would not let them see a Jerry Springer show on TV. So here's what the student's response was, and here's another. These are older students now. So, we're not 6 anymore. We're older. What do? So the students slapped, kicked, pushed, and spat on the teacher. If something doesn't take place, if things don't go the way that I want them to go, well, I take matters into my own hands, right? This is commonplace, but this is not normal. This is not normal. The preteen students were outraged at the minority teacher. Now, I want you to circle this word because. You know me, I like the word because. Because what comes after because is supposed to make sense, right? So they did all this. They slapped her, they kicked her, they pushed her, they spit on her because she wanted them to watch an educational film on TV rather than the more entertaining Springer show. Well, that's a lie. That's not why they did that. So you can write, because they didn't accept the answer that the teacher gave. Because we in the Peaceful Solution know that that's the truth. True or false? Can we watch the Jerry Springer show? No, we're going to watch an educational show. What should your response be if you're the student? Okay. Can we watch the Jerry Springer show? No. What should your response be if you're a student? No is okay. Peaceful Solution 101. Okay? So that's the real reason they did it. I'd like to show my next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, the one after that. We'll have to skip that one for time's sake. Sorry about that. Okay. Oh, no, the other one. Should be a man sitting at a desk for this one. Okay, do you see that man at the desk? Okay, so this is a man, he broke into Senator Nancy Pelosi's office, okay? He broke in there. I want you to, as I finish reading this article, I want you to focus on the picture that I have on the screen. The event in the classroom anarchy says volumes about the deplorable state of the nation's public school system. Not only is the watching of television common in public schools, instead of the traditional 3 R's, but the students felt, now look, I want you to keep looking at this man. The students felt that it was their right to revolt in class and attack the teacher like a pack of wild dogs to satisfy their desires. They felt that it was their right. I want you to look at this man. He's a grown-up teenager now. He felt that it was his right to break into this woman's office. And you know what else he did? They said on the news that a laptop was stolen and an anonymous note was left. This is commonplace. Is this normal? Like a pack of wild dogs. Teachers. We need to teach these parents to guide their children not to follow the crowd, to join in on such behavior. Being a parent is the most important job in the world. Put that man back up on the screen again. I bet he didn't go alone. He probably talked some friends into going with him. Probably the same friends he had in junior high. Probably the same friends he had in kindergarten, first grade. Do you see where I'm going? Parents have to teach their children the importance of having integrity, internalizing those character traits, those positive character traits, so that they would never be pulled to do something that they know is morally wrong. That man was arrested because there was a camera that saw his face. They were taking pictures, selfies. He actually posted this on his own website. I really want everyone to see the importance of catching it when they're young, because do you see that man there? He wasn't always 60-something years old. He was a 6-year-old boy at one time. He was a 14-year-old boy at one time. He was an 18-year-old boy at one time. He was a 20-year-old. He was a 25-year-old. He was a 30-year-old. But he was never taught positive moral character. Do you see the need for the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program? When I saw what was unfolding on the news, I was horrified that we have gotten to the point that there's so much disrespect for authority in today's society. I could not believe it. So we're going to continue reading here. It says, in addition to watching TV, how we handle our anger in front of our children can be equally as damaging. How do you behave when your child does not act the way that you want them to? What about when a car cuts you off? And you've got a little person watching. You're driving down the road, somebody cuts you off, you blow your horn, you might even do a hand gesture, scream, yell, holler. What we're doing is we're role modeling for that man that was sitting at that desk, because that child sitting there watching you one day is not always going to be a child, and that's what we have to teach the parents. Do you or others in your household rant, rave, scream, curse, slam objects, bang doors? If these behaviors are displayed in the presence of your children, they are learning from you and others around them poor coping skills and a lifetime of poor anger management. Management is when you're a manager, you get things done, you delegate things out, you work things out. Anger management. Anger is normal. It's normal to become angry. You can become angry with people, but what's not normal is acting out in this way. I worry about young people that act this way, because it's not only themselves that it affects, but it affects everyone that they see, everyone that they brag about what they do. Remember that article, it said like a pack of wolves, a pack of wolves. Love can turn to hatred, and if you just don't get control over your emotions. Love, I've seen love turn to hatred, where you've loved and respected someone one minute, and then you turn in hatred for the same person. And that's what we breed. That's what you just saw on the screen. Poor coping skills and a lifetime of poor anger management skills. Keep in mind that our ultimate goal is to control our anger so that it does not cause harm to ourselves or others. Do we ever think, when we're acting out in anger or retaliation, that people, they can become hurt? You actually can hurt someone. But you find that you're justified in your own mind when you're doing it. There's no justification. The author of this program says, 2 wrongs never make right. So somebody wrongs you, and then what do? You retaliate. You do things that you know are not right, things that you know you haven't been taught your whole life. And you can get led away. That's what we need to teach these parents. So the next and equally important goal is to teach our children how to control their anger so that it does not lead to harmful, resentful behaviors. Note, we can have immoral and negative behavior without being angry. And yes, you can. There are other things. There are other reasons. I'm going to have to stop there. Just keep in mind risky behaviors, because risky behaviors can also cause us to have that negative behavior. We're going to have to stop there for this evening because we are out of time and we are chugging right along in our book. So please join us here next week where we will continue, okay? Thank you for coming.